Hi, and welcome to the TJ Gourmet, where I show you the shamefully simple way to make gourmet meals in less than 30 minutes using items you'll find at your local Trader Joe's.
In this episode, we'll be making my signature beef stew, perfect for winter or any occasion.
All right, so this is the signature stew. I've got friends coming over in about 1 hour, so this stew taking about half an hour or less is going to definitely be put to the test. These are the items, the kitchen implements you're going to need to have. A couple of knives and something to stir things with, and a cutting board, and most importantly, this pot. And the beauty of this recipe is that pretty much everything is just thrown into this pot sequentially and cooks in the same amount of time that you're preparing something else. And in about 30 minutes, you have a stew that probably tastes something like maybe it took all day to make. And the secret to saving time here is in cooking while preparing, and also that some of the ingredients are pre-cooked. All right, so I'm going to move these out of the way for a moment here and introduce you to our items that I got at TJ's today, in order of when they're going to be going into this pot here. So the first is this uncured bacon ends in pieces. I remember seeing this and thinking, like, why would anyone want like bacon that isn't like those perfect slices? That I don't know, but definitely found a use for them. Let's see, I'll stick that right there. Next, we have an onion, and you can do a yellow onion. You can kind of do any kind of onion you want. I didn't want to go too crazy with the amount of onion, so I got this sweet onion in the regular produce area of TJ's. Next, we have 2 cartons of this organic Hearty vegetable broth. Anytime I could do organic, I do. And luckily this is organic here. The reason why I use vegetable broth and not chicken broth or beef broth or something else is that there's already bacon in this thing. I mean, that's the base of this meal. So, and there's going to be a couple other meat items. Just figured might as well balance the thing out with just using vegetables. So, I got a couple of these, and I'll stick these about right there. The next thing that's gonna pop in is organic tomato paste. The thing about this tomato paste is it's really helpful when you're doing something savory, especially if it's very vegetable heavy. Tomato being a fruit, the tanginess and the acidity, or I don't know, I'm not a professional, whatever this is, whenever you add tomatoes to something that has a lot of vegetables, it just immediately kicks it up into the delicious stratosphere. So, all right, the next item are going to be these organic rainbow baby carrots. And another thing that makes something feel gourmet is when they're multicolored. I guess the less like homogeneous something is, the more interesting it is, the more gourmet it feels. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to throw those in whole. By the way, we're not going to cut those up at all. These potatoes we will give a quick little chop to. I don't think putting them in whole would be a good idea. Then we have a couple meat products that are going to go in. This here is, I really, what I usually use is the pot roast, and this is the beef sirloin roast. It's a little bit of a shame that this is going into a stew because it's really meant to enjoy on its own. And it's a little bit pricier than your pot roast. You can also use like the beef brisket. You can use the pulled pork. Those are both great options. If you use those that already come in a sauce, you probably don't need as much or any tomato paste. But today this is what I found. So we're going to use this. And I like things that have a little spice to them. So this is these hot link sausages. I think this is one of the best things I've ever had at Trader Joe's. And compared to the other sausages, these are just like so perfect. And the flavor-wise, they knock it out of the park, and other metaphors. And then finally, we have this shredded green cabbage. If we added this any earlier, it would just dissolve into nothing. It would be just like these like sinewy seaweed things that are just floating around in the stew. We want to keep these remain intact. So we put these in pretty much last minute. They'll just slightly wilt, get heated, and that's when we want to serve the whole thing. I've made this stew many times, and I've done it with a lot of different. Sometimes I would omit the bacon, even though that is kind of a tragedy. Sometimes I omit other things, and sometimes I add things things you might not expect, like for example, prunes or orange juice. I mean that maybe is not so crazy because adding sweetness to something that's savory always just kicks the flavor notches up quite a bit. So it's never a bad idea. And so you can kind of play with it. There's certain things you're not going to want to leave out, but speaking of bacon, but yeah, I mean, it's yours. So have a good time with it. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn my burner on underneath this pot here. And I'm going to turn it to like a little under medium heat. And I may have to turn it down. Depends. Each burner is different. This is electric here. If you have gas, I mean, sometimes you really just never know. One thing I actually did not mention that are really good to have is a pair of scissors that you use just for the kitchen. These are made by Fiskars, titanium. They're pretty good. I'm going to go and grab my cutting board and just use it as a way to keep this from getting just too out of hand here. We cut the bacon open. We're going to actually cut this bacon up a bit. You'll see it's like these uneven pieces. That's like how it comes. It's cheaper because it's not intended to be beautiful. But we're pretty much just going to cook it to smithereens. So we don't care. I'm going to see what I can do with this big old knife. See if this just cutting right through it works. This stuff can be pretty difficult. Okay, that works. Not too bad at all, actually. It has a lot of tendons and words that you really don't want to use for food that you're going to be eating later. So you can see that here. These are just becoming these small pieces. It's kind of handy that it's in this big kind of mass. Makes it easier to cut. It already smells really good. And the thing about this bacon is you don't need to have a spice cabinet at all, because once you put this bacon in, you start the whole recipe with this bacon, you don't need to add salt. You don't need to add pepper. Add whatever you want, in the end. But I'm telling you, don't do it until you taste it, because this bacon alone is going to make this thing just sing. So just frying the bacon. This recipe is not for vegetarians or vegans, I should add. One of my guests is going to be vegetarian, so he will not be having stew tonight. He'll be eating something else. All right. I'm going to clean this up a tad before I cut the onion and be right back. You'll figure out that I'm pretty tidy as I'm cooking. I don't really like a big mess to be looking at while I'm eating. So here's the onion. I'm going to quickly rinse this onion. Make sure you remove your sticker. That is not a feature of this recipe. And let's stir this up a bit. So what's happening with the bacon is that it's beginning to release a lot of its oil. And, it's browning for sure, because you don't want a lot of that fat to kind of start to get, for the texture to be a little more appetizing when it's in the stew. So you're certainly doing all those things. It's probably going to turn up the heat a little bit. I want this to cook pretty quickly. There's a trick to cutting onions. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. All right, I think you want to start by cutting in half this way. And then you want to cut it this way. This starts the process of taking the outside off much easier than if you hadn't cut it before. It is also going to make it really, really easy to cut up. And it doesn't really matter like what size you could cut the onion thing, what size the onions cut up to. It's really more here for flavor. Texture wise, it's going to not really make a difference. So now you got these quarters, right? Look, it even has a little handle. Pretty convenient. And you do like as if you're drawing rays of the sun with your knife. And then you come along here. This is something I think they teach you in culinary school. So you don't cut your fingers off. You just use your nails and put your nails right against the blade there. And see, this is what you end up with. Kind of perfect little chopped onion pieces. So I do that again. And then I just kind of go around and get the rest of it. Timing wise, it's kind of perfect, every time you finish a quarter, you can just stir that pot a bit. I don't know that, I'm going to throw these in just as I'm doing it. Some of them will be cooked a little more than others, but I don't feel like it matters. My eyes are not having any problems. I wonder if because this is a sweet onion, it's not as bad. Curious about that. Like, does it have less of that gnarly onion acid? Whatever that stuff is. So as far as onions and bacon go, I feel like you couldn't really start with a better combo. The smell reminds me of in San Francisco. There's in the Mission, you've got I think they're called like hodos. I don't know what the technical term or if there even is one, but they're basically vendors on the side of the street, and they wrap hot dogs in bacon, and they've got all these onions and peppers and stuff that they throw on top of it. Looks pretty awesome. I think I've had one when I was really, really drunk. Other than that, I was always a little wary of getting some kind of food poisoning or something. I don't know. I'm even scared of restaurants a lot of the time. So this onion is cooking in this bacon fat. That's just money right there. And when those onions get about kind of translucent, that's when we're gonna take our next step, which is adding this vegetable broth in. So I'll just do a little cleanup while these onions are getting the works done to them, and be right back. Remember that book, The Joy of Cooking? I think it came out in like the 80s or 90s or something like that. Just makes me think of that. I experienced the joy of cooking. I don't know what to say. It sounds like a nerdy thing, but it's pretty enjoyable. Wipe our prep area down a bit here. Let's see how these are coming. While those are cooking, actually, I'm gonna prep the potatoes since I'm trying to be a little time conscious here. Let me cut these potatoes up. So the first thing you want to do with these potatoes is you want to rinse them pretty good, which means I have to find my colander. Okay. Some people call this a strainer. Since we're on the TJ Gourmet here, I'm going to tell you the official name for it. It is a colander. Strainer is similar but different. Strainers are more like made of wire mesh. They strain. This isn't strain. This washes. And that's the pretentious word of the day, colander. Stir this guy a little bit. This is starting to look pretty awesome, isn't it? This looks like some really good street food right there. Okay, I'm going to grab my cutting board again and my potatoes. I'm going to use this knife. You know what? I'm going to jump in here and put this vegetable broth in. I feel like the onions are looking about ready for it. So there you go. Pop the top. And as soon as you drop this in, you're going to notice that it stops sizzling. That's because the broth is room temperature and pretty much just kills your buzz. So I'm going to turn it up to high until we start seeing some of those nice bubbles that indicate heat. Second carton. We may end up adding some water to this later in the end, because you want the broth to solid food ratio to be nice and balanced. And we'll go ahead and open up this tomato paste here. I like to rinse the cans on the outside. That is probably way too OCD for anyone else. I'd also like to introduce anyone who isn't familiar with these to these can openers. Some people tried them and realize that they are magic and then don't use them anyway. That's their prerogative. But basically what it does is it doesn't cut the lid off. It actually unseals the lid, so the entire lid comes off. If you're doing like tuna or something that you would like to use the lid to strain with, or to like push against and get the water out of there with, it's not helpful. But if you don't want to get cut accidentally, it's super helpful. I'm gonna grab a little spoon here, or I'm just going to use this spoon. Let's not have to dirty extra spoons. Let's just, I don't know if there's a science to how much of this to put in. I'm going to put in half of it and then have that like awkward can of tomato paste that never gets used in the fridge. And then that thought just made me want to put the rest of it in. So there we go. The whole can. You can't go wrong with tomatoes, like with tomato paste. It's tangy. It's sort of like, it's not really sweet, but there's something about it. Tomato paste. You don't want to eat it on its own for sure. My dad used to make spaghetti with tomato paste as the sauce. It was not good. Sorry, Dad. I think it was like his way of trying to be a minimalist. But minimalism is not just about having little of something. There's an art to it. And that's the second pretentious thing I said today. That's all right. This is the TJ Gourmet. All right, let's cut up these potatoes. See how they're multicolored? That's some gourmet stuff right there. You don't want to like think too much about how to cut this potato. I think what I do is I cut it in half. You get two halves. Then you cut that in half and go 1, 2. That's pretty much what you want right there. 1, 2. Easy peasy. If you have a smaller one like this, just go 1, 2. Toss it in. You could just cut them and set them over to the side rather than throwing them in like the way I'm doing it. The downside to this is that they don't cook at the same length of time, so maybe some of them will be a little more cooked than the others. But if you're fast, you can get this done in like, I don't know, a minute or two. And so I don't think that's really going to make a big deal. Also, this broth is still heating up, so it's not really a big problem. Look at these purple potatoes. Aren't these weird? Weird equals gourmet. Sometimes I have made this stew and it's taken longer than 30 minutes because I was distracted and probably watching Netflix. I was kind of addicted to Hell on Wheels for a while, even though the storyline really doesn't ever go anywhere. I just like the aesthetics. I don't know if you noticed the beginning of the show was filmed like exquisitely, very, very beautifully. Someone took a lot of care, and then as it went on, they were just like, screw this, and they were just like, maybe it was like post-production, I don't know, maybe it's camera uses, maybe it's lighting. Lighting is a big part of filming. So you can hear that it's just starting to boil. And these potatoes are almost all in there. Here you got the little ones that just need a little crisscrossy. Don't stab your hand. If you keep your hand up like that, I think, just create a little tunnel for your hand for the knife to go through. Cooking should be relaxing. It really shouldn't be. You shouldn't be stressed out while you're cooking, or you will definitely stab yourself. Washed and ready to eat. We're going to put this whole thing in there. Is that crazy? We're going to put it in and we're not going to cut it up. These big carrots like that actually make it feel hearty. It's exciting when you get a bowl and there's these big chunks. You don't want it all like bland and just like sitting there and sad. You want each bite to have lots of different textures and things going on. It's fun. Let's see how our ratio is here. That looks pretty good. So this is going to boil and cook these carrots. And while that happens, I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup because I like to clean as I go. And really the next steps that we have are quite minimal. So I'll be back. We're going to turn this down here. So turn it down to maybe like, at this point you just need it to boil. So maybe like a little bit lower than medium. You just want to hear that bubbly sound. It's kind of simmering. And let's cut these up. These are like if you ever go and have like a spicy hot dog. And if you're not into like spicy stuff, you don't have to use the spicy hot dog, spicy sausage. But I like them. I think that the flavor itself, I don't even know what they put in it, paprika. It's just so delicious. You don't want to cook these to oblivion because when you bite into them in your stew, you want it still to have that flavor of the spicy sausage come out with each bite. And see, I'm cutting up into big chunks like this. As I was saying, like part of the fun of this stew is the chunks. So having these put in kind of late in the game is a good thing. It just heats them up, but retains their juicy flavor. Let's try 2 at a time, huh? I should challenge myself to do 3 or 4 at a time sometime. I love that sound. I'll try not to disturb it with my talking. Let's check on these carrots and potatoes. The potatoes look still pretty opaque, so I'm going to leave them alone. Also leave alone those carrots. And I'm going to open this up and get this cut up now. I'll kind of try to show you what it looks like inside. Because you see these boxes and it's like, it's just a box. It's kind of fascinating, intriguing to know what's inside. So this box opens like this. And inside this paper box is meat. I like to rinse the wrapping. Just, again, OCD tendencies. This is in another language. Peel here. I found the one that is in the language I speak. So look at this. This comes in a bunch of juice. You know what I'm going to do with this juice? I'm going to pour it. Oh, see, that's kind of a fun and dirty way to cook. Just put everything in there. It doesn't even matter. You don't want to lose any of that tastiness. Those will come out in the flavor notes. This thing is pre-sliced. So we really just need to kind of give it a couple of our own slices. As you can see, it's sliced this way. And look how, I mean, that's a beautifully cooked cut of meat. And we're throwing it into a stew. I'm going to cut into thirds. I'll just turn my heat up just a little bit. You just want to feel like those carrots and potatoes are cooking. The worst thing is when you're waiting for carrots and potatoes to cook. That is the worst time ever. This is a perfectly cooked piece of meat. I want to eat it, but that wouldn't be very civilized of me right now. This is a cooking show. All right. Man, when this goes in, this is just going to, the soup, stew, it's going to be off the hook. All right, while those carrots and potatoes are cooking, I'm going to, oh, look what else I found in my bag from TJ's. It's organic sour batard. I'm from San Francisco, and I prefer sourdough bread because it's like a thing, evidently. It's just delicious. Something sour with something savory. Sour savory. It is a classically accepted pairing. No question about it. Yeah. Let's check on these guys. All right, I'm gonna pull out one of these. So you can't see. I'm gonna pull out a carrot. It's certainly hot. I'm gonna pull out a potato. Potatoes are so small. There we go. Okay. So we just need to make sure that they might continue to cook a little bit, like while my guests are arriving, as it's sitting here. A mild heat, just keeping its warmth. So it doesn't need to be perfectly cooked. It can be a little bit al dente, as they say. That's perfect. Perfect. Okay. This meat can go in now. And it'll kind of just start coming apart, like as it's simmering in here. So it's okay that these are like a little bit stuck to each other. And of course, after we put this meat in, our final element will be shredded cabbage. And at that point, I can pretty much turn this thing down to warm. And simply by the fact of the cabbage being in the stew, it will cook to perfection. You've probably noticed that all the meat that we put in here is pre-cooked. The bacon is cured, which is a form of cooked. And those two meats that we've put in are also pre-cooked. So one kind of cool thing about that is that you don't have to freak out about like salmonella or I don't know, getting whatever microbes or whatever make you sick from raw stuff all over the place. Let's see if I can give you a little better view of how this is looking. That's pretty much your stew there, less the cabbage. Let's get this cabbage in there. Shredded cabbage. Lazy man's cabbage. I was going to get ahead of cabbage. I did not see them there. Sometimes TJ's just doesn't have certain things. All right. You got to remember that cabbage cooks down like, I don't know, it cooks down to like a third of what it looks like here. So I could fill this thing with cabbage and it was still cooked down. It's really good for you. I think it's like the most eaten, what's it called? Vociferous? Vociferous? Cruciferous. the most eaten cruciferous vegetable in some countries. I don't know which ones they are. My family are all from Portugal, from the Portuguese islands, the Azores to be specific. And as a child, I went to this thing called the Festa, and we ate lots of cabbage. It was cabbage, and I mean, it kind of reminds you of like food that you get at an Irish place. Corned beef and cabbage. It was like kind of like corned beef and cabbage and bread and all that. So I guess I put like a little more than half, maybe about half of this cabbage in there. This is like a stock. Let's throw that out. We don't need that. That's pretty damn good. I might add a little bit of water to this to get that ratio a little more ideal. There's already enough flavor in here. I'm not worried about diluting it. That bacon packs a serious punch, so not really a problem. This also might cook down slightly as I let it sit here on low while I wait for the guests to arrive. And there you have it. My signature stew.